Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
Hey, Aubrey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent. I have a difficult question for you. Let's see if you
All
can think
right.
of something off the top
Yeah.
of your head.
Okay.
Has anything happened recently that struck you as odd?
Well, I'm not sure if this is a great example, but this morning I accidentally hit the car against a brick wall when I was backing out. That was a little odd for me because I don't do that kind of thing very often
That's a perfect example. That does strike me as odd that you would
for
hit
me.
something because
Yes.
it's you're
Yeah.
not the type
Mhm.
of person to make an
Yeah.
error like that, right?
No, no, it's hard. We have a
Oh
huge
no.
SUV and a very tight driveway,
Mm,
a city townhouse, and
yes.
normally I do like a 15-point turn to get out of our driveway,
Shoot.
but this time I was going about my 15-point turn and then I heard it and then I realized, "Oh, shoot."
Oh
So
no. And it wasn't beeping at you like
oh,
proximity warning.
oh, no, no, Aubrey, our car is
It's
from
older.
2005. Yeah, no, no beeping.
I have a feeling a lot of the listeners probably have newer vehicles. Most of them for the
Yeah.
last 10 years or so have these proximity warnings. So it's like beeping at you really
Yes.
loud if you're getting
Oh,
too
no.
close.
No, no, no.
But nope, not for Lindsay. That's what happens. Oh, shoot.
Yep, so that's odd, just it's not odd that it happened, but for me, it's odd because I
Odd
don't
that it would
really
happen
hit
to you.
things very much. Yeah, I'm usually pretty careful. So,
No,
there
that's a
you go.
perfect example. I love
Yeah.
this for this expression for something to strike you as odd. We got a great
Mhm.
question about it. I'm excited to dive into this vocab because
Yes.
this is an interesting way to talk, to connect about things that strike you as odd.
All right, good, and this is a question from Mateus. We love your questions, guys. Send them
Yes.
in to support@allearsenglish.com. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Want me to read it?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Said, hey, Aubrey, thank you and Lindsay so much for answering my question about sick and sickening on the podcast. You're welcome. That was a great question.
Yes.
That was a
Great
fun
episode.
episode.
Mhm.
I have another one. I've been hearing native speakers say that struck me as odd or that struck me as smart a bunch of times. And I was wondering if I could use this chunk with any adjective or only with odd or smart. Such a
Mm.
good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is a feature of what native speakers tend to say. It's a really nice way of fine tuning your English for connection. Don't you think, Aubrey?
Absolutely. I agree. And I had to think about this a little bit because it's definitely most common with like odd, weird, strange. That strikes me as strange. That strikes me as peculiar, maybe bizarre. Also, surprising, interesting. That strikes me as surprising or interesting because it definitely implies that something is unexpected or strange, right?
Okay. Out of the ordinary,
Out of
right?
the ordinary, yes, but
Mhm.
I don't feel like I have heard it with anything positive. Like,
Right.
even that
No.
strikes me as smart, that strikes me as intelligent.
No.
I don't use it this
Amazing.
way. I don't feel like
No.
I've heard it. What do you think?
No, no. If something is wonderful, let's say, for example, I wouldn't take the time to say that strikes me as wonderful. I would just say, that's wonderful.
That's
Right.
wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, because that's true. That's a good point. This is sort of a longer chunk that you're sort of saying as you're processing how peculiar something
Exactly.
is. That strikes me as concerning. That strikes me as
Exactly. Yep.
peculiar.
So it's sort of like you're narrating your cognitive process there,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to dive into this today. We want you to use this amazing phrase and also a few other ways that we express this because really these are just interesting ways of saying I think, right? You're just
Yes.
sharing your
Mhm.
thoughts.
Right, but we don't wanna always have to say, "I think, I think, I think." That
No.
gets boring. Even if we're on the IELTS exam and the
Oh
speaking
yeah.
test, we don't wanna always be repeating, "I think," right?
Yeah,
That could
that'll hurt
be
your
a
scores, your fluency
mhm.
scores, your vocab scores. You can't repeat vocabulary, but even in conversations, you don't want to be the person that's using the same verb over and over. There's so many fun options.
Yeah, don't forget, guys, if you are preparing for the IELTS exam, we have a whole other podcast called IELTS Energy Podcast. Aubrey is over there, Jessica's over there, I'm over there. It's a good time to get the skills that you need for IELTS. So, Aubrey, how can our
Yes.
listeners find that show, by the way?
Yeah, search IELTS Energy wherever you listen to podcasts, hit follow. Honestly, even if you're not studying for IELTS, we teach so much great vocabulary over there, speaking and writing strategies, but especially if you're preparing for the IELTS exam, you need to make sure and listen to that podcast.
Exactly. And while you're hitting follow, hit follow right here on All Ears English. All right. Good. Aubrey,
Awesome.
let's go deeper into it strikes me as.
Yeah, let's give a couple more examples here, right? I love we've kind of
Yes.
shared when we would use this. So I might say, and in the past tense too, it struck me as odd when he arrived early. He's
Mhm.
usually late.
Yeah, and again, we're narrating kind of what we're thinking. We're thinking, "Oh, I felt it was weird. I thought about it, and yes, it seemed weird to me." Right?
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about the difference between present tense and past here, right? If we're saying it strikes me as odd, we're sort of talking about a general something that's always true usually, right?
Right.
It always strikes me as strange when something happens. And then if we're
Mhm.
talking about something in the past that was surprising, that's when we're going to say it struck me as odd.
Right. So we do need to use different sort of variations of this word in the present and past tense. So here's an example in the present.
Yeah.
Always. It always strikes me as surprising when someone gets really aggressive.
Right. So
Yes.
we're not talking about a specific instance here. We're just
Mhm.
saying like this always strikes me as surprising. I always find it shocking.
Mhm. Good. And what would be another one? Our opinions of people, right?
Yes, we use it this way a lot. So she
Hmm.
strikes me as the type of person who is a good leader. And this is an interesting chunk just to say, I think this about this person. I think she's probably a
Yeah.
good leader. She seems like
Mm.
she would be a good leader. This is just an
Mhm.
interesting way to say that.
Yeah, and this is not going to the meaning of something out of the ordinary, right?
Right.
This
This
is
is a
just saying
different.
my impression, my feeling, my first
Mhm.
impression, how I take in that person is that they would be a good leader. Okay.
Right. So this is a totally different way that we use that expression. It's more
Hmm.
idiomatic, right?
Yes.
And we're just sort of being colorful with our language. Instead of saying she seems like, we'll say she strikes me as.
Yeah, I like that. I want to use this more. I don't use it
Me
enough. I'd
too.
like to
I
use this more.
agree.
I
I
use
really
seems a
like
lot.
it.
Yeah.
This is a good reminder to both of us. Let's
Okay.
add this to our
Good.
we need to use it more. I
Yes.
agree.
We're learning so much on this show, Aubrey.
Yes. All right. All right. Our second option, this is very similar. Instead of just saying, I think, I find it. We'll say I find. So,
Mm,
for example, I find it odd that she never called. And really, what I
yes.
mean is, I think it's odd that she didn't
Yeah.
call.
Or it seems odd or it strikes me as odd too, right?
Yeah. Yep. Same meaning.
She found it strange that he doesn't lock his doors at night. Aubrey, did you lock your doors when you were growing up? This is always a good
Never.
question for people. Never. Okay.
Not the car.
Interesting.
We would leave keys in the car in our driveway
Really?
and
And
not lock
never.
them. I know. It was in
Wow.
the middle of nowhere. That was very rural, right? Our closest
Mm,
neighbor was a couple of miles away. So someone would have to like really want to steal
yeah.
something. And we just felt so safe.
Yeah. I felt always felt safe where I grew up too. We did lock our doors, but I don't know that we needed to,
Right?
really, you
Probably
know?
not.
Yeah.
It is nice to feel that safe, but it's still probably smart. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard a lot of true crime
Oh yeah.
stories about someone in the middle of the woods getting murdered. So we
Well, that's
probably
the
should have locked
thing.
our doors.
Well, I think that's the thing. The '80s, it was before the true crime boom, right, of
Right?
podcasts and
We weren't
I guess we
aware.
had yeah, we weren't aware. We had the movies and everything, Friday the 13th, but we didn't really have true crime in the way we have it now as a form of
Exactly. Now
entertainment,
we
right?
know that we need to be careful. We need to lock our doors, right? And
I
here's
wanna go
another
back to
one
the
because
'80s.
this is we'll also use this, like it strikes me, to talk about kind of something that's always the case. Like, I've
Mhm.
always found it strange that horses can sleep standing up, for example,
Yeah,
right? Something
yeah.
you've always thought that always strikes me as odd.
Mhm. And this is another good way of asserting who you are and what you think, right? Just the things that we find odd or strange are a good conversation starter, are a good way to show our values and our views. Okay.
Yeah, or what a fun
Maybe,
way to like if you say something that you have always found strange and then ask, "What about you? Do you think that's odd or is it just
yeah.
me?"
Or just the other connection piece is things that the whole world takes for granted that you
Yeah,
want to question.
good
Uh,
point.
Deeper
Yes.
things, right? Issue like anything about the way society is run. Maybe you want to question that and see if someone else agrees with you and you can start a conversation
Yeah,
about
this
that.
might be a great way to strike up a conversation with someone that if you're not sure they agree with you, this is a pretty non-abrasive way to say, it struck me as odd when I read this in the news. What do you think? Right? Because you're not going in hard on like, I think this very strongly, right? You're sort of broaching the
Right.
issue to see if this is a topic you could talk about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now there is a third, Aubrey, that we want to share with our listeners. What is it?
Yeah, this is a little less common, but I really like, and it's fear that. I fear that. So, for example, I fear that she is getting more stubborn by the day. I might say this about one
Ah.
of my children. And really, it just means I think she's getting more stubborn by the
Okay. And it's kind of like in something that's negative, right? You're observing something that seems to be negative. Yeah?
exactly. Yes,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm. Or I fear that we missed out on our opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, this almost sounds a little more, poetic, right? It's a
Yeah.
more beautiful way of speaking if you're like, "Ooh,
Mhm.
I fear that," or you might even say it to be sort of facetious, like jokingly a little bit, like, "I fear that we missed the train as the train
Yeah.
goes by."
Right, right, right. I was gonna say poetic or theatrical
Yes.
or dramatic or something, right? Yes.
Mhm. Maybe at work, "We fear that this is going to be a mistake," right? Really, you're just
Good.
saying, "I think. I think this is
Yes.
gonna be a mistake."
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, Aubrey, let's dive into a role play. What are we doing here?
Yeah, so you and I are friends describing something that happened at a party we both attended.
Okay, let's see what happened. Here
Yeah.
we go. I found it odd that Marie wasn't speaking to Jack. Did you notice that?
Yes, I fear that they may have broken up. If that's the case, though, I'm surprised they both went to the party.
Yeah, that does strike me as peculiar. You'd think they'd want to avoid each other for a while, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't,
Oh,
yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
So,
interesting because this, if you notice something out of the ordinary, right? I would strike
mhm.
up a conversation like this with a friend. Be like, "Did you notice that? Did you
Yeah.
think it was strange, or was it just me?"
Yeah, what I like here too is this is useful if you are standing on the outside of something happening
Yes.
next to someone and you want to connect with them. This is commentary, right? You're not in it. You're not. What are the names of the two, Marie and Jack, right? But you're
Right.
on the outside. That's kind of a cool connection skill as well.
Yes,
Mhm.
and this is interesting too. If you want to ask someone about this, but you don't want to gossip, there are phrases that would be so much more like gossiping, right? Whereas
Yeah.
this, you're just kind of like, this struck me as odd. What do you think? Right? It is,
Hmm.
you're kind of floating above the gossip on just so more
Yes.
just like talking about like, what do we think?
Yeah, I agree. It feels a lot less gossipy or shallow. These phrases,
Yeah, they're not like
they're
ill
more
intentioned.
observational. Yeah.
Yes, right.
So I started by saying, I found it odd that Marie wasn't speaking to Jack. Did you notice that? And I'm checking in with you, which is another thing we do as social beings to read the
Exactly.
room, right?
Yep. Yep, exactly. It just means the same as I thought it was, but a little bit less, yeah, a little softer, kind of just like, "Oh, I found it odd. What do you think?" And then I
Yes.
said, "Yes, I fear that they may have broken up." And this
Mm,
is me sort of saying, I think they may have broken up, but it does have this little bit of an implication of like, I don't know for sure. I'm worried this is the case. I think
right.
it might be, but I don't know.
Yes. And then it's a negative thing, right?
Right.
Yes. You wouldn't say, I fear something positive, right? That would
No.
be weird.
I
Yeah.
fear that they just won the lottery. No,
Yeah.
except that maybe that's, I fear because then I didn't, right? No, it
Yeah.
would be something
Right.
negative. Yes.
Good. And then I said, yeah, that does strike me as peculiar, right? And peculiar is a good bonus word for today, right?
Yeah, it just means
Peculiar. Hmm.
strange,
Hmm.
bizarre, and it's interesting, there are a lot of options. I think the most common is this chunk that strikes me as odd, but really
Hmm.
any of the synonyms for odd, peculiar, strange, bizarre, absolutely, and then anything else, as long as it's kind of that connotation of something being surprising or different, there are a lot of
Yes.
options.
Wow, Aubrey, I feel like today we found a lot of different social contexts in which this can be a connection skill, don't you think?
Yes, I agree, right? If something strikes you as odd or interesting, strike up a conversation about it. I would love to
Mhm.
have that conversation with you guys out there, listeners,
I love
right?
it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss a single episode of this show. All right. Aubrey, I'll see you next time. Okay.
Awesome. See you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.